Hi, on the Woodpecker today, I'm making this small cyclone for my small vacuum. I've owned this vacuum for more than 8 years and I love it. When it's time to empty the dust bag, I always empty it into my floor dust collector hole. As a matter of fact, I have had the same disposable bag for the past 5 years. I empty it just like that, about once a month. Yes, for me it takes about this amount of time to fill it with 36 liters of dust. But on my super small vacuum, the 3.6 liter dust bag gets filled way quicker than that. So I have to make more trips to the dust collector hole. But it's still the same bag that came with the vacuum. In the end, all this dust ends up inside my cyclone barrel. And this gave me the idea to make a small cyclone just for my small vacuum. I begin by looking around on Thingiverse, just to see if I would be able to find a cyclone to my liking. There are a lot of cyclones there, but this one caught my eye. With its modular philosophy, I would be able to print a bigger one. But this doesn't start well. No, the printing goes well, but I didn't have enough filament in the spool I used, and after 28 hours, because of that, I ruined my printing. I get another color and start another printing. But after 35 hours, I notice that I'm having the same problem. While searching in the menus, I found that I had a change filament function. So I switch filament and continue the printing. In the end, this is not that obvious because it happened just at the beginning of the threads. And after almost 2 full days, I have the first part of my future cyclone printed. But I'm not done yet. I still have to print the funnel part of the cyclone. For this part, I bought a special, expensive, more transparent filament. This was not a good idea because it caused me some headaches. You will see pretty soon. But I managed to print it anyway and in record time. Okay, at least in less time than the top. But I'm not done. I still have adapters to print. But at least for them, the printing was pretty quick. And now that I have all the printed parts that I need for now, I need to fix my printing. Yes, because I didn't print my new filament to the right temperature and some layers didn't stick together very well. Not terrible for a cyclone. I need to fix this. First thing to do is to make the inside smoother. Then I mix some slow set epoxy and put some inside the cracks and everywhere inside the funnel. And after applying a bit of pressure on top of it, more epoxy on the outside. I leave this like that to dry. But my printing problems are not done yet. It's super easy to screw the adapter onto the misprinted part. But just by looking at the actual print, it's obvious that it needs some work. I need to fix this with a rasp and some chisels. After a while, I'm able to screw the adapter in place. But my adapter problems are not done yet. I'm unable to screw the one for the dust input. I had a bad adhesion issue, and the circle is not totally round. But by heating it with a heat gun, I'm able to remodel it to the right shape. Now it's perfect. But because of these adhesion problems, the first 2 layers look like crap. I try to fix them with the heat gun again, but it doesn't work. So I have to use epoxy again. I've printed several hose adapters, but I don't want this one to point up like that. I want it at an angle just like that. I printed some taller adapters just for that and cut one at 45 degrees. It's the first time I've changed the speed of my saw. I cut it at slow speed and super slow. In the end, this does a super job. But I need to cut another piece of pipe. So I tape another printing on the guide block and make another 45-degree cut. Now it's time to stick both pieces together. To do so, I heat up an old saw blade. When I judge it's hot enough, I push both pieces on the hot blade and quickly stick them together. Here's the final result. Not bad. It's better than I expected. But just to be on the safe side, I reheat it again. But I'm not done because there's a little gap at the top. I remodel it by rubbing it on the hot saw blade. Good. Here's my adapter. I'm very pleased with the result. Now I'm finally able to start making dust. I start by wasting a full minute and draw this elaborate plan. Then it's time to cut 4 pieces of plywood for the side of the box I want to make. When I have them, I cut box joints. And here I mess up again. I glue the fingers without checking if they fit. And no, they don't. It was too tight. I had to break it apart just like that. What a mess. Now I need to cut another piece of plywood, add another shim in my dado stack, and cut all the fingers again. But this time around, I check if the box will fit nicely. Since it does, I can glue it together. This is not rocket science. A bit of glue between the fingers and a bunch of clamps. And I don't forget to check if the box is square. When I'm sure it is, I leave this alone while the glue dries. The next morning, I need to remove this. When most of it is removed, I finish the job with the orbital center. Then it's time to cut the box top. I should have used my insert without the splinters. This wouldn't have happened. But I have no issues with the remaining 3 sides. After tracing the shape of the top and bottom, I can cut them. And glue them in place. This is not very difficult. A bead of glue and some clamps. I also do this for the box. And after wiping off the excess glue, I just need to wait for the glue to dry. But I also need a small lip to hold the lid in place. And after gluing the lip in place, well, I used almost all my small clamps. Yes, this took a lot of clamps. I just need to wait for the glue to dry again. But during this time, I can use a guide bushing and a straight bit to cut a hole on the side of the box. To do so, I use one of my already cut circle patterns. Each time I make one, I keep it for future use. This is so useful. But I need a rabbet at the back of the hole. For that, I change the bushing for a bigger one and put a slot cutting bit in the router. After setting the bit height to the height of the plywood, I can cut the rabbet. When I'm done, I raise the bit and cut the rabbet even deeper. Then I can remove the pattern and do all this on the other side. Then using another bigger round pattern, I cut plexiglass for some windows. This pattern was a tad too big. Perfect. Now the glue is dry, but as expected, the lid doesn't fit anymore. I need to chamfer the edge of the lip. Now the lid fits in place, but when I measure where to put the latch, I notice that I don't have any wood inside to screw it to. So I add more strips inside the lid. And again, I still need to wait for the glue to dry. Now I can mark where the back latch will go and drill its pivot hole. Here's the first latch in place, but it's not the only thing that I've printed. No, I also printed clips to hold the vacuum in place on top of the box. So after putting the clips in place and making sure they were at the right place, I removed the box carefully, mark where the screw would be, and screw the first two clips. With those clips in place, it's easy to find where to screw the other two. Here's how the vacuum will hold to the box. But for this to hold in place, I also need a latch. But I just noticed a small problem. The hook of the latch is way too close to the edge of the box, and the latch pivot will be a bit outside the lid. I'm forced to make some modifications. First thing first, I need to clean this part of the lid and glue a piece of plywood the same thickness as my printed clips. But I quickly conclude that I won't be able to clamp this, so I will use gravity. On the box, I add a piece of scrap plywood. But I know that just gluing this like that won't hold. So when the glue is dry, I drill 4 holes and fill them with some dowels. When the glue is dry, I can drill the latch pivot hole. Here's how the vacuum will hold to the box. This will be perfect. But obviously my modifications are not totally done yet. After tracing where I should remove the wood on the lid, I remove it. Then come the times to remove the excess on the box. Now that the box and lid are a perfect match, I can drill the hole for the hook. After screwing the hook in place, the box and the vacuum will hold together just like that. It's exactly what I want. I'm super happy. But I'm not done. I want to be able to hook this box onto another box. So to do so, I print more clips. I will leave the link of all my printed parts on the description below. To figure out where to screw those clips, I use double stick tape and put the box in place. Now I'm able to mark the location of the screws and I can screw the clips. But for the next 2 clips, I need to take some measurements and transfer them on the box before screwing them in place. I don't forget the bottom hook. And with this, I can lock my box onto one that is the same type of box. But all this is for a small cyclone. So after putting it in place, I can figure out where to cut the hole. Then, yes again, with another round leftover pattern, I cut the circle and it's exactly here that the cyclone will go. And I'm finally ready for the finish. First thing to do is to sand everywhere. After removing the dust, I'm ready to spray it. Now I just need to wait for the varnish to dry. When it is, I lightly sand everywhere and spray another coat. But before continuing to work on my box, I want to be sure that the varnish is super dry. So I make another episode. After more than a week, I can glue the first window. I used fast set epoxy for that. When the epoxy is dry enough, I glue the other window. Then it's time to screw back all the printed parts. To be able to see through the window, I obviously need to remove the protective film on it. I also spray tabletop slippery coat so the lid and box won't stick together. I also spray it on the cyclone threads and screw the cyclone together. One thing I can say is that my cyclone is pretty colorful, but I still need to screw it in place just here. So after marking where the screw should go, I drill for them. For a better seal, I add double-sided tape under the cyclone. Put it in place and screw it down. And I don't forget to remove the excess tape. But when I try to use the hose connector I bought, it doesn't fit. It's obvious that even if I bought a 27mm connector, it's bigger than my 27mm hose. So it's time to go back to the 3D printer and print a smaller screw adapter. It's unbelievable all we can do in the shop with a 3D printer. Now that I have a hose, I can screw the angle adapter and plug a hose between the cyclone and the vacuum. I'm finally ready for my first test. First of all, I'm going to use this container to weigh the dust. This empty container weighs 200 grams. So full, it has 600 grams of dust in it. I will all suck it with my new setup. Okay, I find that I'm losing a bit of suction. But it's also true that now I have two lengths of hose. Soon I'm going to cut the gray one. But nonetheless, it's obvious that there's a lot of dust falling inside the box. Now that I'm finished, it's time to open the box. There's a lot of dust inside. But how much? I put the dust back into the container and check the weight again. It's missing 50 grams of dust. If you're like me and you can't wrap your mind on how much dust this means, well, here it is. This is still more than I was hoping for. 1/12 went inside the vacuum bag. Okay, it's better than all the dust. Now it's time to cut the hose. One thing for sure is that I'm not losing a lot of this hose. Lucky for me, because this hose doesn't come cheap. Here it is, my new cyclone for my small vacuum. Even if I printed my cyclone, I can't say that I saved some money. The filament probably cost me 50% more than if I would have bought an actual small plastic cyclone. But it's done now. But I'm super happy with the latch and clip. They make my box super useful. But I don't know if the windows will be that useful. On the cyclone side, it's pretty hard to see through, unless I'm straight in front of the other side. And it's still fuzzy. But I'm super happy about the box joints. They look great. And with my bottom clip, I can hook that to any other compatible Systainer. This was my new small cyclone for my small vacuum. I hope this gives you ideas for your own vacuum. As for us, we'll see each other soon on the Woodpecker.